Yeah, hi, I'm Laura. As Josh just said, we're from Northam, a country town, a couple of hours out of Perth, and we've just got our little Charlotte with us today, who is my daughter, just turned 10, bit of a miracle baby, had a rough journey, but she's joining us today too. So when Josh was tiny, when he was a newborn, I was teaching. I was also a principal in lots of remote locations up in the Kimberley and in the Goldfields region, and Josh basically had the most awesome start to life. We were financially comfortable, but he had this amazing lifestyle where his swimming pool was a gorge in the beautiful Kimberley, and he was taught to climb and swim and everything by beautiful First Nations kiddies that basically adopted him like one of their own. They kind of got to play with all of his toys, but he just basically was welcomed into this community and thought of all of their parents as his parents and them as siblings. That life came to a fairly abrupt halt when I was pregnant with my third child, Charlotte. So I had two, Josh and his younger sister, Isabella, by that stage, both very healthy and well and enjoyed the lifestyle of Kimberley and Pilbara and Goldfields. And then had some pregnancy complications early on with Charlotte, and turned out that there was quite a major defect called a diaphragmatic hernia identified. Wasn't sure whether Charlotte was actually going to pull through, and she did. She's a fighter, very determined little gorgeous girl. And then her journey since then has been quite challenging. I have had to resign from my career, my passion, teaching and being a school principal, and now basically care full-time for Charlotte. She's homeschooled, and her care needs are quite extensive and basically involve care around the clock. So I'm unable to have a job now. I'm unable to be a teacher or a principal, and we survive on a carer's pension. So we receive a carer's pension and family tax benefit, and that's all. There's a carer payment as well, which is a very minimal amount towards the costs that anyone with a medical condition incurs, and so I suppose like medications and things like that. But that's our income, and so it's not really enough to survive on. It's barely enough to get by. We do make what little we get kind of stretch, and usually we do okay, don't we, Joshy?
Yeah.
But it's sometimes quite a struggle.
Well, in our family, quite often, because of Charlotte's care and how we look after her, there's quite a lot of hospital admissions we have to go to, and obviously after we get back from a week-long admission, there's no food that can be eaten in the fridge. So quite often, most of the family, the children in the family, have to skip school the next day because there's simply not enough money to, buy enough food for lunches the next day. And many nights, Mum she unfortunately has to skip meals so that there's enough food for myself and my other siblings to eat the next day. Obviously, fuel is a struggle, and right now we're facing some housing insecurity. But yeah, there's a multitude of issues that have come with it.
I think it's just, for me, it's the pervasive stress. Even if there might be enough food in the fridge one particular day, that might be the day that I receive an electricity bill, and then that just makes me worry about how I'm going to cover that particular bill. And it is food insecurity as well. As Josh was explaining, it can be sort of returning from a hospital admission where we've been in Perth for a couple of weeks or so and have come back to a fridge full of inedible food, but it's also getting to the end of each fortnight and scrounging what we can to try and create something that's remotely edible and nutritious for the family. It's really, really not easy. And I think for me, poverty is just a heaviness in my heart. It is a weight in my heart day in, day out, that what if, when's the next big expense going to come in? What's that going to look like? How am I going to cover that? Thinking about the fact that in a month's time rates are due, I've put nothing aside, but we haven't lived it up with the money that we should have put towards the rates. We just actually have been trying to get by and live, but that's then that kind of constant nagging stress, and you know, it's really, really difficult and mentally and emotionally draining living that anxiety day in and day out. And for me, as a mum of 4 little kiddies that depend on me to meet their needs, it's just this constant worry that I'm going to let them down, that I'm not going to be able to give them what they need to be strong and healthy and have their needs met. I was talking actually quite recently, and I was speaking to Josh actually. He's now 16. He's probably only become aware of just how acute our financial situation is over the last year or so. I think a lot of parents of young children try to shield their children from the label or stigma of poverty, and it's just a reality that we live with and we worry about as parents. And I feel like as a family, we do talk about a lot of stresses and a lot of things around Charlotte's care that's quite confronting. We also do talk about, for instance, if there's a camp that we can't afford to cover, you know, we talk about those sorts of things, and it's okay in our family to express if you're really not happy about something. It's okay to get cross and angry and resentful, and as long as you sort of talk that through, so we have an open dialogue about those kinds of disappointments and things that we have to miss out on, the sacrifices we have to make, doesn't make it easy. And yeah, what I was sort of I suppose hinting at before is that often I will put on a really brave face, and then once everyone's in bed, that's where I go in and I go to bed and sit there and worry and, you know, cry myself to sleep going, you know, I failed them again. I wasn't able to provide a decent enough dinner tonight. They ended up having, you know, noodles with whatever veggies I could find, and, you know, I feel like I'm letting them down, but it's actually the system letting me down, us down as a family, actually.
Yeah. Well, quite often at school, there's many different things that I've had to miss out on. Quite often, not only because of my caring role with Charlotte, but just how we get by. I do many advocacy things for poverty and other things like carers, and at the moment, quite a lot of that is obviously going through forward to support the family and making sure that we can get through fortnight to fortnight. After school, quite often I'm doing this advocacy work, which I enjoy doing, and it's to support others. But even now, if I feel like if I stopped and spent this time on other things like going out and having fun around town, like I see my friends do, it's going to make our family struggle quite a lot more.
Wow. I think poverty steals childhoods. So I think one of the biggest things that I feel as a mum, raising my children in an environment of poverty, having worked so hard to study, to get myself a career that I was passionate about and loved, and then to have had to relinquish that and now have 4 beautiful children that I so desperately want to give the world to. I want to offer them every opportunity possible, and I know that I can't do that, and it steals from the childhood that I wanted to give them. It steals from me the satisfaction of being the mum that I always desperately wanted to be to my babies. I've always had this dream of being a teacher and being a mum, and that was what I wanted from when I was tiny enough to start pretend playing, and I was always the teacher drawing on the chalkboard, and I had a baby and I'd be nursing my baby, and that was just my dream. Obviously my career, there was a huge amount of grief and loss when I had to give up my teaching career, and I was a principal at 26, and so to lose that career trajectory success that I'd sort of worked so hard for, and then to be in a situation where I then wasn't able to give my children or Charlotte the millions of experiences, you know, sort of travel and just every opportunity, tutoring, anything, just simple things, just to even be able to let them choose their own nice new clothes as against having to get hand-me-downs. You know, every time I have to give them something that's less than I want to give them, I feel like a failure. I feel guilty, and it is actually really, really mentally and emotionally draining. It's quite damning on mental health, I think.
Yeah, poverty, it also steals the futures of these children. Like, we live in Northern because we simply can't afford to live in Perth. Obviously we would if we could, because all of Charlotte's medical treatments are down here and everything that we need to keep everyone in the family healthy, and mainly Charlotte. But thinking about the future, I would love to go to university. I would love to get a degree and get a job in medicine or engineering that I haven't fully figured out, but it's going to be a real struggle once I leave home to try and find a place to live, and possibly still support my family if it's needed, because like I said, a bit of the income that I'm getting is definitely going to support the family. So if I move out of home, I still need to support them, while also supporting myself to get this education.
So it's a huge weight of responsibility that Josh carries that no child, 16-year-old child, or, you know, he's carried it probably since the age of 6 when he first took on the caring role for Charlotte. He's carried that weight of responsibility for the family to be okay. Obviously when he was very young, he didn't have financial capacity to help, but he would be the person getting up to feeding, pump and SATS monitor alarms all hours of the day and night, sometimes when I would sleep through them out of absolute sheer exhaustion, or he would be the person that would be there, you know, with the oxygen and the bag and mask during a seizure, because I was at the other end of the house, and so he's already got the emergency stuff happening, you know, kind of giving the rescue breaths and compressions to try and bring Charlotte round before I've even, you know, got into the room. And so I think it's too much. Poverty is too much of a responsibility to place on the shoulders of families. It's too much for a child to have to bear that, and it makes, I've seen it cause my children, Josh included, and his other siblings, it's made them grow up way too quickly. It's made them be robbed of an innocent, carefree childhood where clothes are given, of course, that's a necessity, and food is just in the fridge, and you help yourself to it because you're hungry, and you don't have to ask, and you don't have to feel guilty if you take something, and all of these things that parents want to be able to do and give to their children is stolen. The innocence of childhood is stolen, but I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, like I said, whenever we didn't have lunch for school the next day, we went to school purely because of the shame of it. But obviously anyone at school, the friends, they just thought it was a day off, a sick day. They thought we were, you know, just a bit unwell. So they would have no idea, no understanding that we weren't at school that day purely because we couldn't actually afford to go to school that day. Some of the hardest days, most of the time, Mum actually takes the brunt of it with either not eating, like I said, and that's something that you don't see outside the home. It's something that Mum even hid from her children until just a few years ago. So to have the expectation of other people actually understanding what's going on inside a house that's actually keeping secrets for their children's safety is just impossible. Well, most of the time it's just guilt. When I see mum not eating, that's probably the first thing that comes to mind. Feels like they feel like I'm not doing enough to support the family myself. Yeah.
You've got a huge, so obviously quite often we've got a very finite portion size that, is to feed the whole family. And Josh is completely, he just refuses to ever serve himself up. Even if I say, come on, you make sure you've all had enough, he sort of almost divides it by everybody and, no, hang on, I can only have this much. And that's something that I see every day, actually. And sometimes I've got my hands, I'm tied up doing something else. I've got my hands full with this child, and I'll say, just, dinner's in the oven, it's ready to go. He says, I can't serve myself up.
I prefer to cook dinner rather than serve up.
Rather start on the dishes or do anything else than serve up. And it's not because he's not hungry or he doesn't want to sit down and eat. It's because he's so paranoid. And he shared this before. He's so paranoid that he's going to take more than his fair share, and it's going to leave not enough food for everybody else. And what I can say, I suppose, about the worst days, it's the uniform that Josh has and wears, the uniform one that has holes in the knees, that I send him to school in every single day, desperately wanting him to succeed and be amazing and win student leader positions and things like that, and yet sending him to school dressed like he is sloppy and not well presented and in a state that perhaps isn't befitting a student leader. Things like that, sending him to school, or sometimes it might be, the other little ones, they might just go to school with some carrot sticks for lunch because that's all we had in the fridge that I could actually, it wasn't quite payday yet. I hadn't been able to go and get some more bread or some more spreads or whatever it was, and so it's like, well, it's carrot sticks and that's it for today, or hearing that they came home and their friend took pity on them. My youngest, 8-year-old has some gorgeous friends, and they'll say, here, have some of my lunch. But me as a mum, I want them to have the lunch that I can provide. And I love, more particularly when I had money and I had ingredients or money to buy ingredients, I baked all the time. My children didn't take rubbish packets and stuff like that to school. They took really, really wholesome food that I'd bake and prepare for them, and it was something that, sort of filled my bucket, that made me feel like a really good mum to be able to do that and to be able to nourish them so well. And now to think that sometimes it's just carrot sticks that goes into a lunchbox because that's all we've actually physically got to give them is absolutely heart-wrenching. I guess just some understanding from, I suppose, politicians and stakeholders, people who make the decisions about how much it costs to be able to feed and support a family. Come walk a day in my shoes. Come see our house. Come see, how little we have to spread amongst 6 of us. And then you try and do that just for a day. And, if you can do it, please tell me what I'm doing wrong. But honestly, the best thing that I can say is, we actually just need income support payments to be increased so that when a bill comes in, it still might be a stretch to cover it, but it's not impossible to cover it. One of the most humiliating things I've ever had to do is go to a local organisation that is there for people in dire straits. I've been there twice, where we've literally just had nothing to feed the children. And basically the regulations are for this organisation that you have to take in 6 months of bank statements. I have to actually produce like 6 months of bank statements. I have to get my printout from Centrelink to show what I have actually received, what I get, and where that money has gone. If they saw that I pay a Netflix subscription, I was queried about that. Are you sure that that's actually a necessity, given that you're coming to us asking for money for a voucher to go and buy some food from Woolworths? And it was actually, once it was actually a fuel voucher that I said, have you got a fuel voucher? I have absolutely nothing in my car. And I have an appointment for Charlotte. It's neurology. It's really, really important that she goes, and I can't miss this one, but I have no other way of getting down there. And I had to produce the same documentation for that, and I ended up cancelling the medical appointment. That was so vital because I was asked so many questions and made to feel like I was, you know, sort of asking for handouts and, you know, sort of deceitfully trying to sort of use them or something. I don't even know. It was the most humiliating experience, and that was about 2 years ago. And now I just cancel appointments that I can't afford to drive to. And sadly, I've got a lot of people in our network in Northam or in the Wheat Belt, and a couple of other families with young children with disabilities as well as others. And I shared that once. I shared that I had actually been so desperate that I'd actually had to cancel, and, you know, a couple of appointments that were really important. I shared it like it was this shameful secret. And then these other 3 ladies sitting at the table with me are like, oh yeah, I've had to do that too. You know, I have to do that quite often actually. You know, if it's at the end of a fortnight, if it's a Tuesday appointment, I may as well just sort of cancel it as soon as it comes in. That's not okay. It's not okay.
Well, I mean, it's not said in the same words, and not said as eloquently, but quite honestly, the quickest cure to poverty is really just more money, more of an income for those people who can't work, and really just barriers to ensure that no matter what situation you're in, like you said, poverty is just so unique in so many different situations. We need to make it so universally, no matter how you're not working and how you're not getting enough of an income, there is a way to ensure that you have enough to at least live on and survive.
I would love people to actually sort of look around, look at your neighbours, look at the people in your community. I think a lot of people have a construct in their minds of what poverty looks like, and, you know, the 40-hour famine, you know, ads on TV, things like that. They see, you know, third world children with these horribly bloated bellies, and that's poverty in their mind. And I just am desperate to get the message out there that people in your community, there'll be people that you are neighbours with who live on your street, who go to school with your children, that are doing it really, really tough. And just because they drive a car that, you know, maybe looks relatively presentable and they present themselves nicely, doesn't mean that they don't struggle every single day to make ends meet. And poverty can just come in so many guises. It can be a senior citizen who's worked all their life and ends up in a position where they're dependent on an age pension that isn't enough to pay off their car and pay the rent or the mortgage on their house. And so that's poverty. Poverty's the carer that found out she was pregnant and then had this beautiful little baby that just had 1,000 things wrong and diagnosis after diagnosis that required round-the-clock medical care. It could be a person who suddenly gets very, very sick or injured and, you know, has to give up work because of that that circumstance. And it can happen to anybody, and it can look so many different ways.
Yeah. I guess if I was going to talk to someone, I know that many people, many middle class especially, have this expectation that they're going to land on their feet, that everything is going to be perfectly fine the next day, and that's because 80-90% of the time it is perfectly fine the next day. But I just, what I would like to share is that that's not necessarily going to happen, and you'd have to imagine not necessarily what it looks like stereotypically, but imagine what you would look like yourself if your income was cut in half or even cut into a quarter. You wouldn't be living on the streets. You still have your car, you still have your house, you still have your family, but you just have to try and maintain that on a quarter of what you used to, if not less.
Well said. I should actually probably heed my own advice, but what I'd love to say to people out there that find themselves in a similar situation to us is, don't be too hard on yourself. It's not your fault. You're doing the best you can in circumstances and under a government that doesn't give you enough to survive on. So, you know, it's no wonder that you're barely able to make ends meet. It's no wonder you're not able to keep a roof over your head. Don't think less of yourself. Don't beat yourself up because you feel like I do, that you're somehow a complete failure as a mum, as a woman, as a person. You know, how did I end up here? All of that stuff that comes into my head. I think we, people in poverty, need to give ourselves a break and just go, it's the system that keeps us here. It's not our fault. It's nothing we've done wrong. We are here and we shouldn't be ashamed. And it's one of the reasons why I'm here today is because we shouldn't be ashamed that we live in poverty. We should actually make our government ashamed of the fact that they push us and imprison us in poverty. And it's one of the reasons why I'm so proud of my 16-year-old son Josh, who is out there loudly and proudly saying, I am poor, my family are poor, we don't have enough to eat, we don't have enough to survive. But guess what? I'm here, I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to be the squeaky wheel that gets the oil. And you will hear me, Mr. Albanese, and you will hear me, politicians that want to sit down and give me 5 minutes of your time. You're not going to shut me up. You're not going to make me go home and live this reality and try to pretend like it's not happening and then go and sit and meet with you and be all pleasant. I'm going to tell the truth, the raw, the ugly, the real truth about what it feels like.
I mean, obviously it's very shallow just to ask for more money, and you know, inflation and all that it wouldn't work anyway. But I guess what I would like to wish is to not people to know, but people to have an understanding of what it's like, to somehow have everyone experience this at one point in their life, because then it wouldn't be the shameful secret. Then everyone is on the same level playing field, and people will be so much more likely to be empathetic to those who are struggling with it today, and much more likely to help them and support them so that we can create that equality in this country.
Sorry, I just really wanted to add, that's a beautiful answer. I just really wanted to add that for me, when I've been absolutely destitute, I've gone, like I said before, I've gone and asked an organisation who exist in our small community to support people who are desperate. And I haven't gone there every fortnight asking, I've gone twice. And Charlotte's 10, so you know, I've been on a carer's pension for 10 years and I've been there twice. Once was for a petrol voucher to get me to Perth for a neurology appointment, and once I was asking for a Woolworths voucher because I had literally nothing in my house to feed my family. And both times I was made to feel like I was trying to apply for a bank loan or something. There was so much red tape, there was so much humiliation that just was a part and parcel of just asking for something that actually at the end of the day would have been a $50 fuel voucher or a $100 Woolies card. And I literally went twice to do it, and I've sworn I'm never going to put myself through that again, because it was so heartbreaking having just the most minor things that I spent money on, or sort of a spend at Kmart that was, some clothes for the kids. Well, why did you spend that much then? And now you're saying you can't get to Perth. Things like that. I just was so humiliated those couple of times that I just feel like we need to actually be treated with respect. There needs to be organisations that you can actually go to, particularly if we're going to remain in a country where our government is quite happy to keep us imprisoned in poverty. At least we need to have places where we can go and say, I need help because I'm on a carer's pension and I'm doing the best I can, but I actually am really struggling this week and I just need some help this week, please. And not be made to feel like you're a derelict lowlife that's begging, you know, actually just be treated with respect, with dignity and helped. You know, that's probably something that I would really love to see.